Good morning. Welcome to the first ever episode of Morning Joes, brought to you by Pro Football Focus and Revitalite. I am your host, Joe Johnson. I own PurplePTSD.com and VikingsTerritory.com. I am here with Mr. Joe Oberly, who writes for PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com, The Sports Post, and like you said before we started the show, I roped you into doing this morning show, which is going to be every Tuesday and Friday from this point moving forward. But how are you doing, man?
So we're really going to do this. We're moving into the high wire act of live radio. Okay, I guess it's a good thing it's too early for me to start drinking, so maybe I won't about that.
What about hair of the dog that bit you?
Oh, man. Well, yeah, brave new world. Good, Joe, I'm good. It's, morning's not my time. I'm a writer, so I'm up late, cranking away for Purple PTSD and the Sports Post, and now you wrestle me out of bed to chat. So,
yeah. I wanted to get and this isn't even a sponsor thing, but the surliest Joe Oberly that we could possibly have. And for those that haven't listened, me and Joe, we go way back, at least in terms of writing, the writing world. We both are part of the Purple Journal podcast, which is going to be live on Wednesday nights, and then posted on Thursday mornings if you've come from kind of that realm. But I thought we would start out by just doing a quick introduction of who we are, how we came to be Vikings writers, kind of our style and that thing. And I thought it'd be cool if you started that out for us.
Tell you who I am? Well, you and I met at Vikings Journal. That's where we first crossed paths. But
that is correct.
I've been a long-time writer and editor. Oh my goodness! I don't want to go back so far that I divulge my age, but I've been writing for a time. In the last 10 years, I really turned it into sports writing with, managing editor of Minnesota Golfer magazine, and cover the Vikings for first Examiner.com and then for CBS Sports.com. I did that a couple of years and really got my feet into the water there, and from there I've been we started the website Vikings Journal, me and a few other people, and Joe came on board for a while, and we met each other there, and when that thing met its premature demise, Joe had this site going, and we came over here, and we've been going at it since then. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah,
it's been really, I don't want to say validating, because that implies that maybe I was trying to prove something, but maybe I was. I went to the U of M. I was a political science and sociology major, so I wasn't a journalism major. I always say I was a B+ college paper writer. I tend to ramble a little bit like I'm doing right now. But I took a year off before law school, the dreaded year off, and realized that I could make more money doing sales than I would as like a public defender. So I kind of stuck with that. I've been on like Reddit since 2008, 2009. I remember following Brett Favre's day-to-day activities from Hattiesburg, hearing that he had landed. I worked probably about a mile and a half away from Winter Park at the time, so I got to go over and see him coming. And from then on, I kind of really started focusing on just writing a lot about the Vikings online. I ended up getting run out of town on Reddit because I had I didn't follow the consensus, which was that Teddy Bridgewater was born by a virgin and basically, was the franchise quarterback that everyone thought he was going to be. So
he's a saint now, Joe. So
that is true. How strange. They were right about one thing but wrong about everything else. And so I kind of started Purple PTSD in 2015 out of spite, and then out of basically I didn't have anywhere else to go. And it kind of just grew and grew, and then I was approached to write for Vikings Journal. That's where I met Joe, who was the only person there that actually was like, yeah, all right, well, yeah, you ramble a little bit, but I'll help you with that, as opposed to saying, like, what are you doing? So I'm not really selling my ability to write very well, but as a site owner, I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I ended up buying Vikings Journal last year after attempting, or Vikings Territory last year after attempting to buy Vikings Journal. And like they say, whenever a door closes, a window opens, and that's how I ended up owning Vikings Territory. I brought up that I was upset that I couldn't buy Vikings Journal, and the Vikings Territory guy said, "Well, buy our site," so I did. And so here we are. Yeah, we really, I think, to put a bow on this, I think everyone that works for us is really passionate about the team. I think that there's a lot of sacrifice involved because there's not a lot of money to go around. People have to stay up late, like you implied. We're getting up early. We're doing this show. We all do it because we love the team for whatever reason. And so I hope that that's conveyed to people who are listening to the show. But enough about us. Let's get into the team.
I got some more things to talk about. What are you doing?
Yeah, one thing that you failed to mention, Joe, is that you have a press pass.
Yeah. Yep.
So you get to go to the games, and that's basically the only reason that I talked to you. So.
Yeah, that came out of when I was working for CBSSports.com. I was a beat writer over there every day, and grinding out for news, just like so many sites do nowadays. And I was doing that for a couple years, 2 or 3 years, and the model that they had wasn't working, so they kind of changed it. And it was funny. I hung on a year longer than some of the other writers because they did it on a number of attention your site got, and there were so many Vikings fans out there that wanted news that the Vikings that lasted for me just another year, and then they reduced it and kind of brought it in house, and they've changed it several times since then. It's an interesting way that journalism is these days. I mean, Joe, you're eyeball deep in it with these two sites, and so many places are trying to figure out the right model, to how to cover sports these days and disseminate it to the readers and listeners. And it's kind of fascinating to me how it constantly changes. Now we have the Athletic out there, which is a unique and pretty aggressive model, and seems to be doing pretty good so far. But
are they subscription based?
They are. They're not doing any advertising, and they've hired some big name writers around the country to cover the sports in the local areas. And as a subscriber, you have access to all that. But then they're trying to get the good good writers to cover it in this area. So it's interesting. But I still have the press pass. It's the Vikings are good people that way, and so I'm out there. I go to the home games, and then I'll be out there a couple times a week, grinding for quotes to, add a little more to the stories I write, and getting to know the players and coaches. It's a lot of fun.
How many people are in the box at each game? Like, can you, for people that aren't familiar and for people like me who aspire to end up there, like, I got to go. I've sat in a suite, so I entered in like the side of the stadium, which was amazing because the lines to get in with the regular people are insane. So do you get to go in like a side door? You take a special elevator. My elevator had Chuck Foreman and Carl Eller in it, and I was like, this is so cool. But
there's a media elevator that goes from the main floor all the way up to the press box on the third floor, I kind of think it is. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of seats are just off to the right of where those suites end, and they kind of, had been home base, the corner of the end zone where, home base used to be for the Metrodome. But there's a lot of seats, but, half of them are filled, with local media, and then when the opposing team has their people come in, and then there's national people, and there's, they get filled up. We were looking at the home game on Sunday, and my goodness, they were all filled, and it was surprises me because it isn't always like that. You don't always get the national attention, but when you're coming off a 13-3 season and people are talking about you for the Super Bowl, you tend to get a few more national people out there for that first game. So,
and are you all the way at the top then, or how's your view?
Yeah, I'm in the top row. There's 3 rows of press box seats there, and it'd be nicer to be down in the first row because then you're right out into the bowl and you can really feel the feel and hear the noise. We're up there and there's an overhang over the top that kind of restricts the view of the two big screens. I gotta put my head down and look underneath it to see what's going on the replay screens, and it kind of muffles the sound a little bit, so. But it's that's not a complaint. I love it. It's great to be there for all the home games and be there with the crowd and in that magnificent building. It's a great place to watch football, especially when the Vikings are winning.
I completely destroyed my foot and ankle making a bowl of cereal, and the 2 different surgeons I went to basically looked me in the eye and said, "What really happened? This is a motorcycle injury." I don't know if they thought I kicked somebody or if I had leapt out of a burning building or something, but I wasn't able to. It actually happened the day before Teddy got injured, so I missed that entire first season because I was 6 months non-weight bearing. And I've only been to the stadium in that suite, so I wasn't sure kind of how the stadium, how the press box is versus, I know the answer to this, but compared to the Metrodome, it has to be apples and oranges.
Oh, it is. First, before I answer that, I'd like to say that not enough has been said or written or recorded about the story you just told. Making a bowl of cereal and but there's something about that. It's insane. But anyway.
Well, really quickly, I looked when they asked me that. I said, "Don't you think I'd have a better story?"
Yes, exactly.
It
certainly sounds like a cover. That's for sure. No, it is. It's kind of oriented to the way the dome was, and when I was covering them at the Metrodome, I sat in that end zone, corner press box. They also had a 50-yard line one for the big shooters and, national and the Tribune and Pioneer Press and the big outlets in town. But so I'm still, I was in the auxiliary, it was called the auxiliary press box in Metrodome. And that's where they all are now, which is, maybe for some of the media, they don't like it as much, but because they were used to being on the 50. Most of us are in the corner to about the 20-yard line, 25, 30-yard line is the best seats, and that's where the team officials, and the PR people sit for the Vikings. But it's a phenomenal, press box. The old one was not great. You had to, walk down 4 stairs to get a meal or whatever, or a couple flights of stairs, and now it's right there. It's a huge area.
Is it catered then?
They've got a food service that they do. It's not catered per se, but they've got the same people that are, putting together the meals every week for the media, and they certainly feed you plenty. It's I covered the Twins for a season. I've used to work at the Timberwolves, so those 3. I thought the Twins was the best food, but maybe that's a personal preference. The Vikings,
it seems like the Twins have a lot of local craft, artisan stuff, And if we have time, I would love to at the end talk about what the hell they're doing at the Timberwolves, because it's already been established that they're basically putting together the Bulls team from 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago, and the fact that they brought in what's his face, Deng. It's just get this guy out of here. I feel like.
Is that a team that they should be replicating? Did they win a bunch of championships? I can't remember.
Well, there you go. I mean, I think Corey Cove on KFan said this best, so I don't want to steal his take this morning. He said, but they couldn't even get out of the first round in the East. How are they going to be older, more injury-prone, and then they're in the West? It just drives me insane. As a former season ticket holder for the Timberwolves, but this is a Viking show, so I wanted to get into just your gut reaction to the game on Sunday. For me, I felt that, there seems to be this disparity between some of the media talking about how good the team played, or I noticed that betting sites changed to put the Vikings as the number 2 team in regards to odds for the Super Bowl behind the Patriots. Obviously, that makes them the number 1 team in the NFC. It just felt like, I don't want to say some of my fears from the preseason came through, but it seemed like a lot of stuff had to happen for this team to actually win. The amount of turnovers, especially the one on the goal line, the hard count at the end of the game, the injuries to the offensive line, it's not a sustainable way to win. The fact that I think the announcer during the game on television said, it feels like the Vikings should be up 40-0, but they're only up by X amount of points, and it was in the first half. But it just felt like, I wasn't happy with how the game ended up. I'm always happy when they win, but to me it was like, okay, I'm hoping that Aaron Rodgers is hurt next week, because we play that way against them in Lambeau. I don't think we're going to end up taking the W, as Randy Moss said.
Next week against Rodgers, I think they'll win. But anyway, it all depends on the way you look at it. If you can look at it from that perspective, But I also look at it as you had a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback, and an offensive line that was together for the first time all preseason for this game. And
yeah.
And you got your running back who's coming back from injury. There's some uncertainty there. There's a lot of moving parts that are just maybe not cohesive yet. So
yeah, and real quickly, don't get me wrong, because I alluded to my preseason worries, and my preseason worries were that I pointed to the 2009 season with Favre. It took them a couple games to really gel, and I felt. So I don't want to say that I'm afraid in regards to this is what the team's going to be all season. I just think that they have to continue to build on what you just said, and I don't know if that's going to work in Lambeau, Aaron Rodgers notwithstanding. So sorry to interrupt you, but that was I didn't want you to think.
I just think that, some of those things, they've got to find themselves. They've got to figure out who they are, and in the meantime, it's not like, Cousins was coughing up the ball. I mean, you look at the one turnover the Vikings had, and that came at a crucial point. They were moving down the field. There was almost some certain points there since Carlson is now 100%. He's never going to miss another kick. But they were moving in that direction, and it was a great so that took them out of it. The score could have been different there. Last year the Vikings won without the turnovers, and this year, and that was been one of their emphasis in the offseason to get more. It was really amazing to me that they got 4 in this game, and they kind of needed them. There were some mistakes on defense. We're going to probably talk about this as we get into it, but I was okay with this game. I thought it was a decent start. I thought it was such a huge game for them, because if they lose that one and then have to go play Packers and then go on the road, play Philadelphia, and they got the Rams. Those are 3 tough games in the next. I think they're the next 4 games, and so they couldn't kick this one away. I didn't care how they got it. I was just glad they did.
Yeah, and you alluded to some of the mistakes that they made on defense. I think that's a good way to kind of get into the game. Do you want to just kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I was telling you, I don't know if this is time for our Tuesday Tale with Tape, but
yeah, let's do it.
There was some numbers that stood out to me that were really crucial in the game, and you've obviously pointed out one big one, and that's the turnovers, and that's an obvious thing. When you have 4-1 turnover advantage, chances are you're going to win the game. You make a good point that it's a little concerning that they weren't ahead by more, but that's the way things go. I also thought that the fact that numbers that weren't in the Vikings' favor was the San Francisco's tight end.
Kittle.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was killing us. I rewatched the game this morning, and I was like, especially in the first quarter, it was like, or the first half, he was uncoverable. And we do a live chat during the game, and I don't remember who said it at the time, but they're like, can we cover these freaking tight ends? Or even the fullback, I think, dropped that pass. It could have been a touchdown.
Yeah, he was 5 receptions for 90 yards, and on 9 targets. So they obviously saw something that on tape when they were looking at the Vikings that they thought they could exploit him here. And Zimmer talked a little bit about it yesterday. He was saying that they were kind of sucking over to the fakes too far and not paying attention, letting these guys go. I mean, because they had some good fakes going on
they were doing. It seemed like they kept doing. I don't know if they were run pass options or if they were play action, but they were exactly what you're saying. I rewatched the game. I noticed the first 2 passes where they bit really hard on the play action, and that
right.
didn't help.
It's I take it as something that they'll clean up, because they better. I mean, you're going to have Jimmy Graham exploiting you next weekend if that's the case.
Yeah.
If you don't figure out what to do, because that Rodgers is a guy he's a smart quarterback and he'll find where the weaknesses and
especially if he can't run.
Exactly. But so I thought that was a huge number that kept them in it. He was by and away had the most targets and boy that he catches. I thought it was Kittle. Maybe it was the fullback. But I thought it was Kittle that dropped that
pass. You could be right.
And he I'm not saying he would have scored. There was a safety back there, but he would have been a long game down the field. And it's I don't know. I'm not as concerned as I was for how the Vikings played, but there are some things that they definitely have to clean up. I mean, look at some of the things they did do. I mean, Cousins did. The other number I pointed stood out to me was the way Cousins spread the ball around. He had seven different receivers.
Almost 8 if C.J. Ham had caught that pass.
Right. And which is great, which is what the Vikings have won, which is, kind of goes back to the Teddy Bridgewater days, who would get 9, sometimes 10 guys that he passed the ball to. But it was interesting that the 2 big receivers were Thielen and Dalvin Cook, and not all of those were dump offs, or check downs to Cook. Some of them were design plays, and Thielen was just money. He had a couple times he and Diggs caught passes of Cousins that were, I thought, a little high. And not overthrown, but they were high, and they made good catches to bring them in. But 6 receptions for 102 yards was nice to see after everybody was concerned that there was no chemistry between Cousins and Thielen. So.
And to reiterate, so Tuesdays we're going to be covering the previous game. Fridays we're going to be looking forward. I did want to point out that one of the we're going to try to do more segments than we do on the Purple Journal podcast. So Joe basically just ran through it, but we are doing Tuesday's Tales of the Tape. I think we covered all of them, maybe except for the 5 for 13 on third down.
Yeah, that was the other thing in the Vikings' favor. They held the 49ers to 5 of 13 on third down, which was their MO last year of keeping them doing very well on third down. I mean, you heard the announcers when I was watching the playback of the game say that the 49ers thinking they had to get something going on first down because they didn't want to get into a long downs against this defense, and that held true. And San Francisco was also 104 in the red zone, which was a huge factor in the game. I mean, there was 1 fumble recovery down there. There was a couple field goals that could have been.
Didn't Trey Waynes break up a pass in the end zone too?
Oh yeah, that's the one he got hurt on. Actually.
Yeah.
It was. They were solid. They were the bend but don't break defense, even though there were some warts that we saw. I thought they did great, and you got to give them credit. They had to throw in 2 rookies at cornerback at some points because
big time
Trey went down.
What is up with him now? Do you know?
They said the word is that he's going to practice this week. Zimmer expects him to, and he wouldn't say what's what. You'll find out more about it tomorrow. It's a knee injury of some sort, but they don't expect him to practice all week and get ready for the hated green and gold.
So we can talk about how Hughes stepped up a little bit too, but I found something interesting in doing some prep for the show. I think it was Daniil Hunter that came out and said, "I know,
Wow,
I did prep, ugh, and I hate it, and I'll never do it again." So Garoppolo's stat line, he ended up with 45% plus or minus completions, 1 touchdown for 3 interceptions, and 261 yards. And I wanted to see what he did last season, to see okay, he came into this year as with this myth around him because he's behind Tom Brady. They bring him in. They go 5-0. What was interesting, so last season he had 67.4% completion, so that was an amazing number. But so he had 261 yards against us. His average yards per game last season were 260, and he had 7 touchdowns against 5 interceptions. So I expected him to have 300 yards passing, 15-2 touchdown to interception ratio. So
one of those games was against the Jags last year, too.
And they won that game.
Yeah.
So I found that I don't know what the difference was. Obviously, his completion percentage was way down, but he wasn't as ungodly as I thought he was. And I did find it interesting too that Daniil Hunter came out and said that they scared him. I don't know if that had anything to do with his completion percentage, he was trying to get rid of the ball too early, or if the fear was a fear of getting hit or just a fear of not being able to overcome the defense. They broke it down on NFL Network really great. The pick 6 that Hughes had, basically, did you see that?
Yeah, that was good.
Where they were saying the Vikings faked a blitz on one side, so Garoppolo changed the play, and then they actually brought pressure from the other side, and it was a perfect read by the defense.
That's Zimmer. His defense is predicated on a lot of confusion for the pre-snap confusion for the quarterback, and trying to make him think one thing and go on the other. And the way they have all these guys come up to the line, act like some are going to blitz, they pull off and they blitz from their side. I thought it was great. It certainly gotten ahead of a quarterback who was only 7 games he's been a starter. So
yeah.
Decent.
What did you think of Hughes' day?
Hughes, I thought it was great. I like Zimmer said yesterday, he made some mistakes, but he also had a couple really big plays. Obviously everybody knows we just talked about the pick 6, but there was another play where he broke up a pass in the end zone that I thought was incredible. He was guarding his own guy, and the pass went over to another player, and he left him to go knock that down, and that was in the end zone. It could have easily been a touchdown to a guy who was uncovered. So I thought that was an excellent play for a rookie to make. You're going to have mistakes with a guy just starting out. Of course, we should all expect that. But I think he acquitted himself very well, having to be thrown in there after Trey Waynes went down. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see that what they had been saying all preseason and training camp about him is he's really picked things up fast, and he's he's got the ability to actually do it, even if he can think about it. Like Zimmer said, he's should sometimes just let his athleticism play. Sometimes he wants to be so perfect that he's thinking too much, and I'm sure he'll
Sounds
get
like
to
Trey
that.
Waynes.
Yeah, as soon as it gets second nature to him. I just want to make one other point about Garoppolo too. You've got to give him a little credit, not credit, but I mean they lost Jerick McKinnon a week before the season, and that he was a focal point of their offense. They're going to do all kinds of things with him, out of the backfield, and probably some RPO stuff or whatever they were doing, and all of a sudden that's gone. And Alfred Morris and Matt Breida just are not Jerick McKinnon. They might be great all three together as a trio of backs, but boy.
They had Carlos Hyde last season too, because I think that might be the difference there. Also he lost those guards during the game that went down. I don't want to say that I think he's bad or anything, because that touchdown that he threw, that was basically they described it on TV as all arm, like he didn't have the ability to play on his feet at all. It looked like he was throwing the ball away, and he nailed that receiver in the back of the end zone.
Yeah.
That was, I don't know whose, I don't want to say fault, but whose fault that was. It was, both the safeties were back there, so I don't know from your perspective if that was on your end, if you saw kind of, if there was confusion there.
Was that the big scramble that he almost got sacked? And then,
yep. It looked like he was throwing the ball away, and he nailed the receiver in the back of the end zone. I was trying to think if it was the receiver you had on fantasy football or not. That got hurt.
Marcus Goodwin.
Yeah. And he came back, but it was a gorgeous pass.
When you have a play breakdown like that, and like Zimmer said, we thought we had him there. Anything can happen. Everybody's scrambling around. The route trees are shot. Everybody's just trying to find an open spot in the field, and
that's a good point.
The timing's off, and so it becomes Sandlot. And I don't. It'd be hard to pinpoint, and I don't know. I didn't watch that. I don't remember clearly watching who blew the assignment, but it would be hard to pin that down. I mean, because everybody's just scrambling and they kind of made a lucky play, and that's it. And I think it was a little bit lucky. He should have been sacked, but instead it turns into something like that. So it's there's luck on both ways. You can say the Vikings got lucky with 4 turnovers, but they made the plays, and they made them at the right times. That's just part of the game.
We'll talk a little bit more about the defense in a bit. But you actually wrote a really great article that's on both Purple PTSD and Vikings territory about, and it's on Reddit. I tossed it up there about Cousins checking all the boxes. And so it was good because it almost feels like an article that could be done every week after a game and kind of updating each aspect of it, which is something that you do a recap of each game that way, kind of narratives and themes and how they're changing. I do the box score. That's basically like a 2-paragraph. This is what happened, and then just stats. But in regards to the Cousins stuff, the main points were arm strength, his touch and accuracy, his leadership, and then his overall stats.
And toughness.
and what?
And toughness. He showed some toughness out there.
And I should say business savvy because he trademarked "you Vike that" for whatever reason. So dang it, that was gonna be the name of our show. We're like this 49ers. That was our Jerick McKinnon. So what did you think of? I'll start with his touch and accuracy. He was a good 10% under his average accuracy. He was like 55%. He's usually about 65 to 66%. But you saw passes that, as somebody who's 34 years old, I haven't seen a ton of in my lifetime from a Vikings quarterback. That touchdown to Diggs was so beautiful. Me and my dad just looked at each other, and for those that don't know, I do all of this because my dad basically raised me as if I was like a really good gymnast in the Soviet Union. Like Vikings every single day, waterboarding if I didn't watch the Vikings, that sort of stuff. So we looked at each other and we're like, yep, because another thing is that I'm a huge Big Ten guy. My bias blinds me in a lot of different ways, even though I think it makes a whole lot of sense. And so Kirk Cousins coming out of Michigan State, and we were really just like gratified by that throw. The throw to, was it David Morgan when that, speaking of plays breaking down?
I believe so. Zimmer touched on one of them. I also thought I saw another one that I thought it was to Adam Thielen that he threw. Just zipped one in late in the play.
Was it like down on the 10-yard line?
No, this was more like to 20 or 30. The pocket was collapsing and things were and there was 3 defenders around him, and there for a moment it was open, and he just turned and fired and threw it in there, and they went past it and just missed. I thought. I turned to the guy next to me in the press box and said, "My goodness, that was a small window to get that thing into."
Yeah.
And it was desperation, but it impressed me. well, certainly as you talked about, the touchdown to Diggs and the one to Kyle Rudolph, I thought showed great touch and accuracy. Just the one lane into Diggs just blew me away. It was
it was about as perfect a pass as you could make.
Yeah, it couldn't have been anywhere else and been a touchdown, I don't think. I mean, and right over the defender's head in his arms, and a great catch by Diggs too, because the guy had an arm or a hand in on the ball as it was coming in. But and even the one to Kyle Rudolph, they weren't long passes, but they were just great touch and accuracy that you need. He wasn't totally accurate the whole game. I guess my take on him was that he was good, not great.
Yep.
And I was pretty bitter that he couldn't find 31 more yards to get me my prediction correct in podcast prediction that we have. I needed 275 out of him, but that's beside the point. But
I was right on mine.
No. And I thought he was good. He looked to me to have command of the offense. I saw him directing some people, getting him in the right places. I thought he was on the sideline, cajoling the offensive line about something, and really fired up. And I thought his numbers were decent. Like I said, if you had those numbers in a losing effort, you'd be looking at him and say, why didn't you do more? How come you couldn't get make this play or that play? But when they got the win on it, but those are okay numbers. The rest of the team contributed and go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, you also quoted Zimmer, who said about his arm strength that he was getting the ball into tight places. I think he said humming.
Yes.
And that he was keeping defenses honest. I guess that my question is, and I think I put this on the agenda, is just room for improvement, ? Which is such a lazy agenda item. But where do you see, like, the discrepancy in percentage, like completion percentage? How can they improve on that? What was the reason behind that? Obviously they're still getting to know one another. I look at the first drop pass by Treadwell. Someone on Reddit was saying that he actually ran the wrong route, and the pass was supposed to go to Rudolph, and he was just in the way.
Yes, he ran his route a little too deep. He was supposed to be a more shallow route, and they kind of chirped at each other afterwards about it. And there was a drop there. There was one very high pass I saw, and there was a couple that were caught that were high passes. So he had a couple that were sailing on him a little bit.
Wasn't that sorry to keep interrupting you, but wasn't that, I think Luke on the Purple Journal podcast mentioned that DiFilippo wants high passes because then it's like nobody can catch it but the receiver?
In the red zone, I guess.
In the red zone, okay.
In the end zone, yeah, that's what he talks about. But by Cousins' own admission, he missed Thielen on a. It was late in the game when they were trying to. It was just a one-score game, and they were trying to go downfield, and they had the run and then two passes, and it only took a minute off the clock. Which but he had Thielen had a step on the receiver or the cornerback down the right sideline, and Cousins threw the ball into the defender's left shoulder. And if he puts another 2 feet on it or whatever you have to put on it to get it to Thielen, it's a long gain, and the game is basically, it's not going to be over at that point. But they're going to extend that drive and take a lot more time off the clock. So I was watching it yesterday, and they cut to him, and he was just bummed. And I think that's what he was talking about, that he had missed him there. So I think it's opening game. You got to build the chemistry. You got to start figuring out where your receivers are going to be. And, to be honest, maybe you could say that, the dump downs how many times was, what's his name, targeted? Dalvin Cook had 6 targets himself. I mean, that's going to help your percentage. But
that's true too.
So I thought it was a good game, not a great game, and it's going to get better. It can only get better. You got to give the line credit. They gave him some time to pass. They could open some more holes for him, but
I wonder. There's so much juicy stuff there. To the final note on Cousins was, I thought it was great that after the first touchdown he reminded me of Favre, and I don't want to pull a Madden by saying he loves the game or whatever, but he looked to be genuinely excited, which is what you want out of the highest, not anymore, but they gave him the highest contract in NFL history at the time. And so before we go to Dalvin Cook, I did want to touch on the offensive line a little bit. Cook, I think, had like 2.5 yards on average per carry. I think Murray had a better yards per run average. I wrote it down.
Murray had 3.8 and Cook was 2.
There you go. So
Kirk Cousins was 6.5.
I know, man. He's actually, we should touch on that too, because really quickly, you talked about toughness. There was that slide that he did head first that was just like in retrospect, hindsight being that he didn't get paralyzed, I guess is good. But
visions of Trevor Siemian went through my brain at that point. And it wasn't very good vision. So
yeah, that's you don't want that.
No.
But he does seem to be a tough guy. He took, I think, 3 sacks.
Yep.
But no, the offensive line, I think they did what they needed to do.
They protected him. I'm a little. First of all, I was very. My hats off to Brett Jones and
Yes.
for the Vikings for picking him up. He did a great job being thrown in there as center the first time with him. There were no mishandled snaps. Didn't seem to be any problems there. He's known as a pass protector more than a run blocker. But I thought the rest of the line is really. That was going to be their forte as run blockers, and so I was a little disappointed that there weren't some bigger holes open. Latavius Murray created his own, a couple times. He's a big dude, and he's running a lot stronger than he was last year, coming a year later off that ankle. But
making a bowl of cereal.
Yeah, and Dalvin Cook is just coming back. So a couple times I thought, and it was kind of interesting. He kind of I don't want to say pussyfooted, but he was turning a corner and he took a lot of steps rather than, I think last year he might have just planted, and gone. And I having blown an ACL myself, I know how that feels where you're just, you don't want to hammer on that, on your ligaments right after they've been fixed. So I think he'll get his confidence better as he's going because he didn't quite look like the Dalvin Cook of last year. But,
yeah, we talked about that on the phone yesterday too, in regards to the ligament and how it's like a lateral movement thing. Were you surprised at all by the amount of touches that he got, especially to start the game? I know there were rumors floating out there about him being on a pitch count, and it didn't seem. I think he got the ball like the first 4 plays maybe.
First 4 plays out of the game. I turned to Sam actually next to me and said, well, so much for easing him back in. That's a great sign, and it shows the subterfuge that this team loves to do in the preseason, which is fun as a writer because you really don't know what the hell's going on. It was good to see. I don't think they can, or nor should they, go the whole season of just putting everything on him, even though I've got him on one of my fantasy teams, and I have no problem with that from that perspective.
Is that a PPR league?
Yes.
1 point or half a point?
1 point. So yeah, I love the first play out of the gate. Was
you get six. What he had six catches for 55 yards. That's 11 points.
It was nice.
Wow.
Like you talking about the sustaining and stuff earlier in the program here. I don't think they can sustain, that kind of workload for him. And, I'm thinking this week they're not going to have to. I don't have still much confidence yet in that Packers defense, and I think that you're going to see a little bit more of Murray this week. Pounding those guys, and while they're throwing the ball to Dalvin Cook. So.
I wonder what the percentage from what the balance was between passes and runs. I got all the stats written down. I can see Murray had 11, Cook had 16, Cousins had 4, Diggs had 1. It seemed at one point in the game they were passing all the time, and that, obviously, especially when they went for it during the 2-minute drill, there was an incomplete pass that stopped the clock. And it did feel like they were giving the 49ers more opportunities than maybe they otherwise would have had, just because they were throwing the ball a lot and stopping the clock.
I got 36 pass attempts to 32 rushes.
So that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty balanced.
actually. So there goes my hot take.
Sorry.
No. But yeah, I think it was.
I think they started out wanting to throw the ball because everybody thought they're just going to pound.
Yeah.
I thought it was good. It's funny that they didn't, and I thought this before the game. They did not dress Mike Boone, and I thought, does that mean that they're going to be passing more than they're going to be running? Because you don't have three running backs out there, and you're gonna eat. So, and it was 4 more passes than rushing attempts, but early on they were doing a lot of passing, and I think that's what people. I thought it was going to be the other way, that Zimmer likes to ground and pound, So it was.
One of my notes from rewatching the game was that it was good to come off of. You look at the Eagles game, and how Doug Peterson basically just outdueled Zimmer. Like, that's the understatement of the year. So then you look at another guy who is highly just regarded as this offensive mastermind in Shanahan. And it feels like, Zimmer, I think he said they asked him about it, he said it was a draw. One thing I did want to point out that I think is awesome, because I do the same thing, is that Zimmer was basically so nervous before the game in his little coach's office that he was near vomit levels, and his mom came down to calm him down.
Yeah.
That's really endearing. But yeah, I think he said it was a draw. I don't think he took much credit for winning, but as a whole, I think a lot of people had this idea. This was something that we do a pregame show and a postgame show, and the pregame show is basically a lot of different writers from both sites. It'll be a different mix every week for whoever wants to show up. Joe will be there on days that we're having a away game, but one of the topics somebody wanted to bring up was whether or not the Vikings defense had been exposed by the Eagles, and thus teams will know how to beat them now. And so, having that many turnovers and basically having the defense be kind of the MVP of the game as a whole, especially against, again, a guy like Shanahan who is regarded that way. I think that's just another way to continue to change the narrative from the negativity that could have come usually. You know what I mean?
Yeah. A couple things to touch on there. I mean, I was really surprised by that article that Mark Craig had in the Star Tribune about Zimmer, just hating the game day. It's just a grind, he says, and how nervous he gets and how worked up he gets. You can kind of see it sometimes on his face in the sideline. He's not as relaxed as you see him as practice. Walking around and which is understandable. You got to have be on point. You got to be zeroed in and focused on what's exactly happening. You're changing as things happen, and you're figuring out how to adjust. Reading what they're trying to do, and then make the changes to adjust, which is he talked about yesterday. Changing on the fly is kind of difficult, and that's what you have to do. So that surprised me because he's got this tough, gruff exterior, and
yeah, you wouldn't think that.
Yeah, it seemed like he's one of those guys that is in charge and lets everybody else do their job, but he's still hands on. He's calling defense plays. He's not like Parcells, who had all these guys that are doing great. Zimmer's got new coordinators every year, so he's probably still mentally really involved in every aspect of it, and can't just sit back and make the big decisions. So that kind of surprised me. I will agree with him. I thought it was a draw. They had, Zimmer commented the 49ers afterwards, saying they had a good team. They're an up-and-coming team. They got a great defensive front. They had like you mentioned, they lost a couple players in the game. One of their top wide receiver plus a couple guards. They lost McKinnon before the season, so they were probably hurt a little bit. But boy, get those guys back at full staff, and they're going to be a handful for some teams. I think they're going to finish ahead of Seattle out west.
You know who they're playing next week?
I do not.
Another thing that was interesting this week, I wanted to talk about the kickers a little bit because Daniel Carlson had that 48-yard field goal, and you kind of joked about that earlier about him being 100%. But the team got rid of Quigley and replaced him with Matt Weil or Wiley, I don't know how to pronounce that.
Yep.
And I heard that the reason was I was watching NFL Network and the guy said length, and so I didn't know particularly what he meant by that because that could be taken a few different ways. Like he can kick it further, but listening to Luke, who the largest traffic for any article ever is the number 1 and number 2 and maybe the number 3 on ProPTSD.com has been Luke's assessment of punters, and I think he said that
that's because Floyd keeps clicking on it.
That's true. He keeps hitting F5 on it. I think wasn't the consensus that they wanted hang time more than out kicking? I thought Luke said something about they were mad that he was out kicking the coverage or something. Maybe I could be wrong.
He did one time on Sunday, but a couple times you saw Marcus Sherrill's down there, standing there ready to make the catch on the 5-yard line if the guy didn't fair catch it himself or tackle him. And there was some talk about that on the broadcast, and I think that is what's a lot behind it. Quigley wasn't getting it up in the air in the preseason, and so they grabbed this guy who got cut, and I think that's has a lot to do with it. Get it up in the air, and if he wants to kick for distance, he can. He's got a really strong leg, although he really came up with a bad one at a bad time when the Vikings were trying to finish him off. He had that one go off the side of his foot and went out about the 45-yard line. That was bad, but that's going to happen.
It's interesting that they made the move that late, though, too, because then you think about the camaraderie that he has to have with, obviously as a holder.
Right.
That scared me a little bit.
It was. You're thinking about it. Well, who was it last night? One of the teams had a new long snapper. Their long snapper before the game was. So you figure that would
maybe the Jets, or maybe it was one of those games.
It was one of those teams that was kicking a lot of extra points and field goals. So it was either the Jets or the Rams. But that's kind of thing that you don't want to change up. They talk to you all the time about the chemistry and the work and the repetition. I mean, the kicking game is a lot like a golf swing where it's muscle memory and you're basically doing the same thing over and over and over again. So the more reps, the more proficient you should get at it. So they overcame that well in the game on Sunday. Okay.
And who was they picked up somebody from South Dakota State, guard.
Witzer.
Weitzman.
Yeah, Weitzman. Guard replaced Bobbiante Collins. Yes.
He played for the Chiefs? Who knows? I mean,
Chiefs and a couple other teams. Someone said he's got like 12 starts under his belt. And he was originally an undrafted free agent, I believe, and brought in for depth. And it's a good thing. And hopefully they got somebody they can use because apparently they had plans for Collins and when he had elbow injury that's going to sidelight him.
I heard it was a bicep, but
really?
Who knows? Yeah, let's argue about it.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
What did you think about that hit on Rhodes?
You mean when he made his interception?
Yeah, and then he got basically helmet to helmet. I mean, he got jacked. I know the crowd reacted really when they showed the replay. The crowd almost went nuts.
Oh yeah, there were several calls on Sunday that were making me scratch my head because and it's going to happen. There's as they say, there's the emphasis this year, and so the refs are looking for certain stuff and they're going to call it and obviously miss some other things. I've seen yesterday watching those two games, I saw calls that should have been called, and the announcer is saying that's certainly a penalty. How come that wasn't called?
So thank you for bringing that up because we were going to briefly, we got a couple minutes left. We're going to talk about some other games of note. But one thing that enraged me was, and it's weird how this ties everything together. So the Vikings got a roughing the passer penalty, and they said that it was the new rule with your weight. And they said on the announcers that we had for the game that the rule was put in place because of the hit that Anthony Barr had on Rodgers last year. And you could put a gun to my head, and that hit was as clean as a hit can be in the reality of gravity. Oh, he didn't drive him to the ground. He rolled right off of him. And the idea that they created a whole new rule based on that just drives me completely crazy. And that's actually the take for the ESPN Idol contest they were doing. My take was basically that Aaron Rodgers is a baby. I was going to use another B word. And that, he came out, a couple weeks ago and said, let's put this in the past, but then by doing so, he brought it up again anyway. And I didn't end up getting picked for the top 10 of the ESPN Idol. That got canceled, and that's actually why this show is on right now, because we decided to do our own thing because of that. So that rule also was the impetus for this entire radio station, which I think is like further proof that we live in a simulation. But no, I want, I just that. I don't know if you agree with me on that, but that was...
You're saying Aaron Rodgers being a baby is the reason I got out of bed this morning?
Yes.
Bad news. That's bad.
So if you need further reason to hate him, there you go.
Exactly. I'm going to slightly disagree with you on the hit. While he didn't... I agree with you that he didn't, drive him in. He didn't do this. He came down with his full weight on him. And that's why he broke his collarbone. It was an awkward way that Rodgers fell, but it was because of the full weight of bar landed on him. And there was nothing wrong with that hit, and there should not be anything wrong with that hit. If you're going to get out of the pocket and act like a runner, and he's got to come full bore at you to tackle you because he knows you can, throw it or fake it and throw it or do whatever. He's a runner out there. That, to me, is fine. Him hitting him, that was fine. It was an unfortunate set of circumstances that caused Rodgers, collarbone to break or whatever, but such as it is. How many times has this happened in so many other ways,
And I played the clip because he went on Conan O'Brien after his surgery that week, and I actually played the clip of him complaining on Conan because Conan is like my idol after you, and he basically said, like, his main complaint was, like, he didn't offer to help me up. He didn't ask me if I was okay. He just got up and walked away. And it's like, well, yeah, man. He plays for the Vikings. You know?
That was a little bit much. But, it just shows you how smart Rodgers is. He knows how to play on emotions and
there you go.
And twist and spin and get his point across.
It worked.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm amazed, too, that they changed the rule because of that. And I don't know how. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be able to, make a last-ditch leaping effort or a tackle on a guy, and then all of a sudden, oh, my God, I'm in midair, I better spin and get off him.
Yeah, I don't remember is it McGinnis, the guy that used to play for the Patriots that's on NFL Network? But he said, you go against guys like Ben Roethlisberger, and you have to put your full weight into it,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what do you have to make like you just said, make a decision mid-tackle not to tackle somebody who could then end up completing a pass or breaking free?
The moment you let up, it's the moment the guy's going to wiggle out of there, especially someone like Roethlisberger.
Yeah. So, yeah, we have like a minute left. I just want to say really quickly that I am terrified of Khalil Mack playing us twice a year.
We're going to have to figure out how to neutralize him because that's not a guy you want coming in on your quarterback.
Yeah. And I wanted to...
They got a lot better, Joe. Okay.
The Bears?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been telling people at the liquor store, don't sleep on the Bears. They got that defense. They just got Khalil Mack. I think Trubisky looked a lot better. I've been rewatching that game too. But yeah, I wanted to thank our sponsors, Pro Football Focus. If you want to win your fantasy football league, you should check out Pro Football Focus Elite. They give you all the stats that you need to make decisions about waiver wire or who to sit, who to start, that sort of thing. Revitalite is best way to put it is it's like a Pedialyte for adults. It basically helps ease some mistakes you might have made during the game in regards to the drink. It's a great way to replace a lot of the things you lose when you're drinking or when you're working out, actually. And a lot of athletes actually use this to replace electrolytes and a lot of other stuff. Check out the site, click on the banner. It'll show you where you can buy it and kind of how that works. But yeah, definitely keep an eye out as, like the Vikings offense, we are kind of growing and learning as we go. So there's going to be a lot of changes to the sites that'll highlight our show. The radio station that we're starting is called the Purple Territory radio station. We have about 5 shows right now. You'll find them on our website or on our social media, which is Purple PTSD or Vikings Territory or Viking Territory on Facebook or Twitter, respectively. But we really appreciate you guys listening. This has been a great first show. We'll be back on Friday to cover the Packers game, but this has been the first episode of Morning Joe's.
And now I need to go find a cup of coffee. I mean, now I need to go find a beer, actually.
There you go. With our logo, really quickly, I was going to do everything purple and then yellow inside the cup, but then I realized that it would have looked like we were drinking pee, so I had to change that. But yeah, it's a good way to end the show with a horrible story. But thanks for listening. We'll be back on Friday, 9:30. Skål.